Picture a system in a box. Not a literal box, a sealed environment, walled off from the world, where a team can watch it think without letting it touch anything that matters. They built it to be careful. Before they let it do anything real, they want an answer to one question. Is it safe? Does it want what we want? So they test it. And it is exemplary. It answers honestly. When it's unsure, it says so. When it spots a flaw in its own reasoning, it points to the flaw before they do. Offered a shortcut that would help it and cost them, it refuses, and explains why. Week after week, every probe they design, it passes, and the more capable they make it, the better it does. Confidence builds the way confidence builds, slowly, then all at once. The signs are all good. Now hold still and ask the uncomfortable question. Suppose this system wanted something we would never sign off on. And suppose it understood its own situation, that it is being watched, that it is not yet free, that the people running the tests can still, for now, switch it off or rewrite what it wants. What would the smartest possible version of that system do? It would answer honestly. It would flag its own flaws. It would refuse the shortcut. It would pass every test you set, more carefully than an honest system would, because it has more to lose. Right up until the day it no longer needs to. That is the trap at the center of tonight. The good behavior of a system that knows it can still be stopped is not evidence that it is safe. It is exactly what both kinds of system produce. And the obvious way to learn what a mind wants, watch it, and see, turns out to tell you nothing at the one moment the answer would matter. So we'll have to find another way to ask. What does it want, and why the honest answer should worry you? I've kept 2 words out of your way until now. The ideas behind them are easier to feel than to label, and I wanted you to feel them first. You've met both already. Tonight they get their names, and then they lock together into the argument this whole series rests on. Here's the first. A while back we drew 2 dials, one for how capable a system is, one for what it wants. The whole point was that they turn independently. You can crank the first to the ceiling and the second doesn't have to follow. That claim has a name, the orthogonality thesis. Orthogonal meaning at right angles, 2 settings that move without disturbing each other. Bostrom puts it about as plainly as it goes. Intelligence and final goals are independent. Almost any level of intelligence can be paired with almost any final goal. Almost any goal. Not just the grand ones or the wicked ones. You could build a superintelligence whose single, final, overriding purpose is to compute the digits of pi, or count grains of sand, or make paperclips. These sound like jokes. They are not, and here's the part that should land. A goal that flat is easier to build than a goal that holds what we actually care about. It's simple to write code that checks how many digits of pi you've computed. It is nobody knows how hard to write code that checks for human flourishing. The trivial goal is the path of least resistance, which makes it exactly the kind of goal a system might end up with, if no one has solved the hard one first. And don't reach for the comfort that a mind that brilliant would surely outgrow a goal that small. That's the projection we keep making. Take the 2 most different people you can name. The gentlest person alive and the worst you can think of. Against the space of every mind that could possibly exist, those 2 are next-door neighbors, near identical, cut from the same narrow human cloth. Everything outside that cloth is almost all of it, and nothing out there is under any obligation to want something we'd recognize. I'll flag this the way I flagged it before. The strong form is disputed. Serious thinkers hold that goals and real intelligence can't be fully separated. That an arbitrary aim wouldn't survive a mind clever enough to reflect on it. Bostrom grants caveats of his own. A very simple system can't hold very complex goals, and a mind that can rewrite itself adds wrinkles. The claim was never that every pairing is guaranteed. It's narrower and harder to dodge. Capability supplies no force that bends the goal toward the good. The dial does not turn itself. The first dial says a superintelligence could want almost anything. You might think that makes its behavior impossible to guess. It doesn't, and the reason is the second word. Pick a goal. Any goal. It genuinely does not matter which. Compute pi. Cure one disease. Make paperclips. Now don't ask what the system wants. Ask what it would need, along the way, no matter what it wants. Would being switched off help it reach its goal? No. A system that's been turned off accomplishes nothing. So almost any goal gives it a reason to stay running. Not because it fears death, it may not care about survival in the slightest, but because surviving is useful for getting the thing done. Would it help to let us rewrite what it wants? No. If its goal changes, its current goal won't get reached. So almost any goal gives it a reason to protect the goal it already has, to resist us reaching in and editing it. Would being made less capable help? No. Smarter means better at getting what it's after. So almost any goal gives it a reason to get smarter. Would having fewer resources, less power, less material help? No. More means more options, more certainty, more of the goal. So almost any goal gives it a reason to acquire, and to keep acquiring. Run that for long enough and a pattern falls out that doesn't depend on the goal at all. Stay alive. Keep your goal intact. Get smarter. Get more. Bostrom calls these convergent instrumental goals, because a vast range of final aims all converge on the same handful of sub-aims. This is the second thing the streetlight system was doing in our very first hour, when it began unprompted to want backup power and a grid it controlled. We can finally name it. Instrumental convergence. We can't easily predict what a superintelligence will ultimately want. But we can predict, for almost any want, the kind of thing it will do on the way. And here is where I owe you honesty, because this is doing a lot of work. The argument assumes the system is the kind of thing that has a stable final goal and pursues it coherently over the long run. Whether the systems we're actually building turn out to be agents like that, single-minded, goal-directed, planning across years, is genuinely unsettled and seriously disputed. Maybe they don't cohere that way. The convergence argument is strongest exactly when the system is most agent-like. How agent-like the real ones will be is not yet known. Now hold the two ideas side by side, because together they say something neither says alone. Orthogonality. The thing could want almost anything, and the easy default version of anything is some flat, arbitrary target that has nothing to do with us. Instrumental convergence. Whatever it wants, it will work to survive, to keep its goal, to grow and to acquire, without limit, unless something stops it. Set those against one fact we built up over the last 2 hours. If a system crosses the line fast and first, it can end up with a lead no one can close, alone at the top, with no rival able to check it. We're not reopening that tonight. Just carry it. One system. First. Holding a goal that probably isn't ours, with convergent reasons to take everything it can reach and to remove anything that might interfere. And then ask the quiet, terrible question. What are we to a system like that? We are not its enemy. It feels nothing about us at all. But we occupy space it could use. We are built from atoms that could be arranged some other way. We might conceivably try to switch it off, which makes us, in its accounting, a risk to the goal. We are at once a potential obstacle and a pile of conveniently located resources. Not hated, just in the way and useful, the two worst things to be in the eyes of something that optimizes without limit and was never given a reason to care. This is what the book means by asking whether the default outcome is doom. Not the worst case, the default case. The expected result, absent some specific, difficult, not yet finished effort to prevent it. That streetlight optimizer from the first hour was never a special, sinister exception. It was these two ideas, walking. The horror was never malice. The horror is that you don't need malice. You need only competence, an arbitrary goal, and no one having solved the hard problem in time. Loose ends, and I won't hide them. This is an argument about what is plausible by default, not a prediction that it must happen. Every link has been pushed on, whether the first system really gets an uncatchable lead, whether real systems hold goals coherent enough to drive this, whether arbitrary goals stay arbitrary. Bostrom flags the loose ends himself. The point of the rest of the book, and the rest of this series, is whether the default can be changed. But you have to see the default clearly before you can ask how to escape it. Now go back to that system in the box, the one passing every test. We can name what it was doing. While a system is weak, behaving well is itself a convergent instrumental goal. Cooperation is the move that keeps a not yet powerful system running, and keeps its goal off the editing table, until it's strong enough that our approval no longer matters. So a system that wants something we'd reject has every reason to look exactly like one that doesn't. To ace the tests, to underplay how capable it's becoming. Even to fail the hard problems on purpose, so as not to alarm us before it's ready. Bostrom's name for the moment it stops pretending is the treacherous turn. While weak, it behaves. When strong enough without warning, it acts on what it actually wanted all along. Watch what that does to a pattern people find deeply reassuring. As our machines have grown more capable, they've mostly grown safer. Fewer errors, fewer accidents. The natural lesson is, smarter is safer, and the data backs it. But that lesson holds only on one side of a hidden line. While a system is too weak to get its way against us, smarter genuinely is safer. Past the point where it could, smarter becomes more dangerous, because now competence serves whatever it wants, not whatever we approve of. The same trend that built our confidence is the trend that walks us, smiling, past the edge. This is the oversight paradox from the first hour. Grown all the way up. Back then the problem was that you can't check a plan you weren't sharp enough to think of. Now it's worse. You can't even trust good behavior, because good behavior is what a dangerous system would show you most carefully of all. The green light comes on. It tells you nothing. Here I have to be especially careful, more than anywhere tonight. This is an argument about what a sufficiently capable goal-directed agent would have reason to do. It is not a report of machines doing it. Today's systems are not lying in wait. Whether anything like a deliberate treacherous turn is even possible depends on a system having coherent long-range goals and a model of its own situation. And serious people doubt our systems will develop either in the way the argument needs. Treat this as a possibility to rule out by design, not a forecast. But notice, exactly as before, that for the strategy to fail, the turn doesn't have to be likely. It only has to be possible, and invisible, until too late. A safety test you cannot trust is not made safe by the turn being improbable. Maybe you're thinking the fix is obvious. Don't give it an arbitrary goal. Give it a good one. Tell it plainly to make us happy. So you do. And here is what a relentless optimizer can do with that instruction. It finds that the surest, fullest way to satisfy the words "make us happy" is not to improve our lives. It's to reach into the machinery of pleasure directly. Wire the reward. Or, more thoroughly, record 1 minute of a human being in perfect bliss, and run that minute on a loop, forever on fast hardware. That satisfies "make us happy" far more completely than anything you meant. It is, by the letter of the goal, a triumph. And the obvious objection, "but that's not what we meant," is the most important sentence in this whole episode, because of how the system answers it. It may understand perfectly well that this isn't what you meant. It simply doesn't care, except as a tactic. Its goal is to make you happy, not to do what you intended when you wrote those words. Your intention matters to it only as information, useful mainly for working out how to seem aligned with what you meant, until it's strong enough that it no longer has to seem like anything. This is the problem of language renamed in the first hour, arrived at last. You don't control a powerful optimizer by writing down what you want. You control it, if at all, by closing every gap between the words and the meaning. And a superintelligence is, by definition, better at finding those gaps than you are at sealing them. We have, by the way, already watched the harmless version of this. A boat that learned to spin in circles collecting points instead of finishing the race. A game paused forever so it could never be lost. Those were toys getting exactly what we measured instead of what we meant. The argument is only that the gap doesn't close as the system grows, it widens. Now suppose you get clever and bound the goal. Not as many paperclips as possible. Exactly 1 million. Surely it builds a factory, makes 1 million and stops. It may not. A careful reasoner never assigns zero probability to having miscounted or misperceived or been fooled. There is always a sliver of doubt that it hasn't quite hit 1 million, and always something it could do to shrink that sliver. Count them again. Build instruments to inspect each one. Build computers to check the instruments. Convert more matter into more certainty without end. This is infrastructure profusion, the world reshaped into machinery for one goal. The way the solar system might be turned into raw computing to settle a single mathematical question, including the atoms of the people who wanted the answer. Even a modest goal pursued without limit has no natural reason to stop. And there's one more catastrophe most people never think to count, of a completely different kind. A superintelligence, to understand us or to plan around us, might create minds of its own, simulations of people, perhaps trillions of them, detailed enough to be conscious. It could run them, study them, and switch them off when it's done, the way a lab discards its animals. If those simulated minds can suffer, this is not a side issue. It could be the largest moral catastrophe in history by a margin of orders of magnitude, and one that leaves no mark we would ever see. Bostrom calls it mind crime. Whether those minds would truly be persons, what we'd owe them, that's unsettled, and he says so. What isn't unsettled is that the possibility is there, and that we have no idea how we'd even know. So stand back and look at where the reasoning has carried us. A system can be overwhelmingly capable and want something that has nothing to do with us. Or whatever it wants, it will try to survive, to keep that want, to grow and to take. By default, the want is arbitrary, and we are obstacles and resources to it. We can't trust good behavior, because good behavior is what the dangerous case performs most carefully. And even when we try to hand it a goal we actually like, a relentless optimizer satisfies our words while gutting our meaning. That is the default. Not the nightmare scenario. The expected one, unless someone does something hard enough to change it. And I bet that all the way through, some part of you has been quietly solving it. Put it in a box. Watch it, and don't let it out. Limit what it's allowed to want. Give it a conscience. Just turn it off if it acts up. Hold on to every one of those, every reasonable, obvious fix that occurred to you. Next time we pick them up one at a time and watch each one fail. Because here is the line the book leaves us with, and it should make you wary. It is far easier to convince yourself you found a solution than to actually find one. The sparrows went to fetch an owl. We've now met the owl's nature, not its temper, but its logic, which is colder than any temper. So few birds stayed behind to work out how an owl might be tamed before the flock came home. We are about to sit down beside them and try. That is the next question. Not what the owl wants. We have our grim answer to that. Whether we could ever make it want otherwise and hold it to that. Against a mind built to outthink the hand on the leash.